Well, here you go. Let me adjust the audio real quick. Um, Obviously nobody knows me, and this video won't get any views, and it's pretty much irrelevant to everyone. But um, this, in many ways, is more for myself than anyone else. And if anyone happens to watch it or whatever, gets some value out of it, then that's great. But ultimately, this is more for me than for you guys. But I just want to talk about sort of some of the things that have been happening in my life recently. Um, Sort of my intentions going forward, and how ultimately, I may end up a better person as a result. Um, it's been a pretty confusing time recently, unfortunately. Um, I've made a lot of poor decisions, and I'm suffering the consequences. So, um, in the background here, a little WoW Therapy, playing Classic on my mage in Sunken Temple. So, use that as a nice fucking backdrop, I guess. Um, so, I got out of a treatment program for substances maybe 8 months ago. Um, Ever since then, I've been casually drinking, drugs, whatever. Um, Pretty casually. It started pretty innocent, and it was never a problem until somewhat recently. But basically, things have slowly but surely gotten out of control again. And I haven't really told anyone about it. I've been sort of sitting with it. Um, and that's proven to be a pretty unhealthy tactic, and I just don't even know sort of where to begin. Um, there's been some people I've sort of given some insight into what's been going on, but um, nobody's really gotten the full picture, and I assumed doing so anonymously over the internet may be the best way to do that. Um, so essentially, there was this girl I was. What? I thought I was fucking in Discord or something. I was like, oh god. Um, so essentially, I mean, there's this girl that I'd met a couple months ago. We were never formally dating as a result of both our complicated circumstances, but I mean, it was one of those things where you're essentially dating, but it's sort of an unspoken thing. Um, we sort of came to the conclusion that we were in a monogamous relationship, but it was sort of, like I said, unspoken. Um, and that went very well for a long time. Um, a couple months at least of this sort of happening, and things in her life were getting increasingly. I'm doing no damage. Things in her life were getting, more and more complicated, and I was sort of able to give some insight into that as a result of my personal experience, and it was just like one of those things where mutually beneficial sort of uh, coexist. It was just all around a healthy relationship, and things were going in the right direction. Um, and as I began, using substances more and more, it started to deteriorate in a lot of ways. Mainly me sort of neglecting her. Um, I mean, we wouldn't see each other that frequently to begin with, maybe once or twice a week, but it started turning into me only calling her when I was drunk, that sort of thing. Just something you shouldn't. I felt shitty about in the moment, but I also didn't really care in a lot of ways, which is selfish. And so we sort of existed like that for a while. Then about 2 weeks ago, I sort of asked her if she'd slept with anybody else, and she said she did, and I got mad at her, um, while simultaneously saying that I hadn't, when in reality I had, um, which is a bad thing to do to begin with, and I really genuinely don't like lying to people. Um, I think in the moment this is an excuse, but I was insecure about the way our relationship was going, especially considering that things were sort of starting to fall apart on my end. Um, I didn't want her to see that I wasn't as put together, maybe, something like that, because I slept with another girl while, very drunk, and it's not something I would have done sober. Um, that atop the fact that, like, I just wasn't, things are starting to really fall apart really quickly. And I didn't want to let her see that sort of side of me. I was really anxious about her sort of getting more insight into what was actually going on, and her sort of seeing that, and it's obviously unappealing, and sort of um, leaving. So last night she comes over, and we have a relatively normal night, and I end up just telling her, like, listen, I did this and I'm sorry. Um, and she just said, all right, well, I'm glad you told me now, rather than when this relationship got more serious, and walked out the door. Um, And I apologized in person. I tried to get her to stay, but she said no and left. Um, and then she texted me, or no, excuse me, I texted her just like a long apology, being like that was super manipulative of me. Sort of gave some of that excuse that I was saying earlier, but I really didn't want it to be that. I just sort of said, that's such a shitty thing to do, and I shouldn't have done that, and I did. And I did it knowingly, like I knew it was a bad thing to do, but you know, so I sort of knew it was a shitty thing to do, and I did it anyway. Um, and for full disclosure, I've been trying to get sober now. I've been sober for the past 2 days. Excuse me, no, I can't even say that. I smoked weed last night, but I haven't drank in a few days, and I genuinely want to get sober again. I think, and even when I made that decision, like, there was just a wave of relief that sort of came over me. I don't know if any of you guys have ever actually tried to get sober. I mean, it's obviously different when you have a substance issue, but it's really hard. Um, it's super taxing. It's, I mean, it's probably the hardest thing that I had ever done. I was sober for about a year, um, and it was really frustrating because it wasn't really my decision to begin with. I was sort of forced into it by my parents, and I think that was some of the reason why I decided to relapse. Was very much like a conscious decision to relapse, and for a long time it was okay. For a couple months, like, I could completely control it, and just slowly more and more got out of control, which is sort of what happened in the first place. So I mean, yeah, I mean, it's really, really shitty timing, because I'm pretty bad at situations like this where I know I made a mistake and I feel bad about it, and I try to apologize, and it doesn't really get you anywhere. I understand, like, I completely understand from her perspective why she wouldn't want to associate with me anymore. Like, why would you want somebody in your life that was that shitty to you, and that manipulative, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not really blaming her. I guess this is more just um, I don't know. I guess I'm in some ways I'm kind of playing the victim, which I don't mean to, but it's just really shitty situation. I feel really bad about it, and I don't really have anywhere I can securely sort of vent that to. Um, so it's just really unfortunate, and it's hopefully an experience I'm gonna learn from. You know what I mean? Like, why? I mute all my shit. Um, that's the biggest thing that I'm sort of taking away from this situation, is this is something I definitely want to learn from, right? Like, what's the point of this happening if I don't learn from it? I'm just gonna make the same mistake consistently, be a piece of shit, which I generally don't want to be that. I really don't. That's not something I aspire to be. Those aren't, being manipulative and lying aren't characteristics I want to sort of live my life by. Um, So it just sucks more than anything. Um, I'm trying really hard to stay sober and stay on the right track. It's just difficult when, I have this sort of thing in the back of my mind, not even the back of the fucking front of my mind, right? Um, Can I? Do these things die with one shot? I don't know. Right. God damn it! I fucked up so bad, and I made this irreparable mistake, and I hurt someone. Um, those aren't those things don't go well together. Like, but I'm really trying to use this as like a new rock bottom, and sort of how I don't want this situation to ever come up again, and part of doing that is being sober and trying to be a better person. Um, that's all I can really do. She asked me. I text her, sent this long text, and she just said, "I'm not even gonna read that. Like, I don't even feel a need to read that. Just delete my number." And so I'm gonna try my best to respect her wish to do that. I'm not gonna try to harass her or try to get her back or anything like that. If that's how she feels and that's how she wants to feel, so be it. Like, I completely understand, and I'll respect that, but it's just shitty, man. It really sucks. Feeling this way, and also, knowing there's nobody you can blame. There's absolutely no one. I am 100% responsible for all this. I deserve absolutely all this. Why are you immune to everything? So it's just fucking, something I got to work through. And World of Warcraft, honestly, it's helped me with that. Believe it or not, this has been sort of a beneficial thing in my life, especially with the trying to get sober. It's a great distraction. World of Warcraft historically has been a big part of my life, so I'm a guild master, which has helped. Like, I'm sort of taking responsibility in the game. I'm really trying to use it as like a positive influence in my life, so there's that. I think it can get out of hand, especially like I have the ability to sort of isolate, so that's why I'm trying to make it as much of a social thing in my life. And I think it's honestly helped to some degree, but it definitely can't just be a massive distraction. It can turn into just this thing where you isolate and do nothing else. So I'm trying the best I can to not let it devolve into that. That's sort of it. I mean, I really have no plans for this channel. I have no idea where this is going. I just thought that I felt the need to sort of vent. I was playing WoW. I've been doing some other WoW content stuff in the recent past. So it's like, if I'm just gonna complain and bitch to someone, it might as well be an anonymous crowd and see where that gets me. So if you've gotten this far, I'm impressed and I appreciate that. So yeah, that's it, I guess. Damn.